In October 2025, the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution and the International Education Funders Group launched the Global Listening Survey to capture the perspectives of the global education community and to better understand what they were seeing, hearing, and experiencing in their communities. The purpose of this survey was to capture the current landscape of global education and collectively reimagine the goals and purposes of global education and cooperation. Over 308 participants from 64 countries responded in 7 languages. The largest proportion of respondents live in Africa, the smallest proportion in Oceania, with the rest equally spread out across Asia, Europe, and South America. 1 in 2 respondents work on education issues in Africa, 1 in 3 in Asia, and 1 in 5 in South America and Europe. 1 in 3 respondents work in civil society organizations, such as non-governmental or community-based organizations. 1 in 4 in international organizations. And a smaller proportion of respondents work in schools, donors, and private sector, governments, and research. Most respondents work in small to medium institutions with less than 100 employees. Our work. The largest proportion of respondents, nearly 52%, work in primary education, whereas the lowest proportion in higher education. Low-income children, girls, and rural and remote communities were the groups most prioritized by respondent institutions, followed by out-of-school young people and boys. According to respondents, the top 2 purposes of education are developing academic and life skills and liberating societies from inequities. In 2026, respondents said the top issue in education is foundational learning. The second is teacher training and workforce development, and the third is skills for work and livelihood. 5 years from now, post-2030, respondents think EdTech, including generative AI, will be the top priority, but skills for work and foundational learning will remain critical. Climate education will also increase in importance. Currently, the most pressing challenges to education are ensuring quality of learning alongside equity and inclusion. AI and climate change will continue to rise as key challenges in the next 5 years. Our funding ecosystem. As of 2026, institutions receive the greatest proportion of their funding from foundation and philanthropies, and to a lesser extent, private entities and governments. The majority of respondents felt that donors were mostly aligned with their needs as organizations. Roughly 60% of institutions have had funding cuts. Funding cuts have resulted in halting programs, reduction in staff and services, which, according to one respondent, means smaller teams doing more work. Of those who experienced cuts, a third were due to the US government, a quarter from private entities, and the remaining cuts were from the UN, domestic or foreign governments. Respondents were fairly optimistic that they would be able to retain or expand funding in the future, but nearly a fifth were not optimistic at all. Respondents anticipate the cuts to international aid and cooperation will reduce services and programs and cause a domino effect of inequities in access, quality, and social mobility. As one respondent in India noted, with fewer cross-country collaborations and less flexible funding, reforms may slow down, and inequities for marginalized groups, especially girls and rural learners, will widen. A respondent in Guatemala noted, populations receive less attention, youth migration increases, and education loses quality and credibility. Some respondents see the massive international aid and cooperation cuts as a moment for shifting power dynamics and paradigms. Respondents from Kenya, Spain, and Qatar saw shifting power dynamics as an opportunity for more power to the countries on the horizon, with greater South-to-South cooperation and more positive, sustainable models. Other respondents highlighted a paradox in international aid and cooperation. As highlighted in Pakistan, I am concerned that reliance on global aid delays the governments taking true responsibility for education. A respondent in the US speculated, "The optimist in me wants to say there will be more government investment in their own education rather than relying on aid, but I am not sure how this will happen sustainably without a robust tax base." Almost 2 out of 3 respondents believe that major changes are needed to address power dynamics, simplify processes, and create multi-year flexible spending. Our future agenda. Respondents felt that the next Sustainable Development Goals should focus on quality, inclusion, and equitable education, as well as other areas like foundational learning and skills, political will, climate education, technology and AI, people-centered approaches, and early childhood development. Respondents in Guatemala emphasized that SDGs should not be implemented in silos and should be values-driven. There is optimism that international aid and cooperation can be redesigned. 40% of respondents were somewhat optimistic, 34% were optimistic, and 12% were either very optimistic or not at all optimistic. In the future, respondents think the agenda should be set by governments, with strong weigh-in from the international institutions and donors, but ideally, the agenda should be set by society, the community, and people. Respondents believed the role of donors should be to co-set the agenda with recipients, although a fifth emphasized donors should have little to no say. In agenda setting, donors should support local agendas and be more flexible. The private sector should also play a more intentional role. Donors' role is to support, not to direct. Global aid should list priorities, build collaboratives, make the process simpler, and support in multi-year flexible funding, said respondents in the US and India. There is a need for flexible funding to partners, especially hard-to-reach and marginalized communities, a respondent in Uganda added. In order to redesign aid and cooperation, we need to shift power dynamics, prioritize local perspectives. A respondent in Somalia urged promoting youth-led education initiatives, giving them platforms to influence policies that affect their futures. Often, young people, especially displaced youth, are left out of decision-making. We need to strengthen the voice of the Global South. Without this voice, global goals will remain aspirations on paper that will be far from the reality in many low-income societies, remarked a respondent in Malawi. In order to redesign aid and cooperation, we need to ensure agenda setting is done collaboratively with a wide range of actors. A respondent in Mexico emphasized the need to elevate existing local solutions. The solutions exist. They exist in the communities. The risk is the pressure from the outside, which will include AI and the control of resources and mindset of those in power, they said. Although funding cuts have created fractures in the system, global respondents were optimistic and motivated to build future education agendas in greater collaboration with communities and young people around the world. Access, equity, and inclusion in education remains urgent, even as new priorities such as AI and climate change are emerging. As a respondent from North Macedonia noted, education is a basic sector, and no international development can exist without programming in education, just as no society can progress without adequate support for the children and youth of that society.